we have no real media in this state. Well, you have us.
It's really time for a parent revolution.
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Right.
That's what the left did with COVID in so many different ways.
Wind energy, especially offshore wind, is a big loser and just another government boondoggle.
Like, what's going on?
People are fed up. They lied to us then. They're lying to us now. They're assaulting our families.
What we do is we look at the lies of the left that they keep pushing out, that America doesn't work for black people. That is not true.
They want to now monopolize truth and say, truth is only what we say truth is. Damn the data, damn the science.
The key with science is it always needs to serve objective thinking. They just call anyone who challenges them a science deniers.
They're evil.
Shut up or we'll cancel you.
What we're going through is a cultural revolution.
This is big, and this is how change begins.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Ocean State Current Command Bunker. Now playing from in the dugout, number 37, Mike Stenhouse.
Our founding fathers envisioned a House of Representatives and a Congress of the people and for the people, common citizens who would return to their livelihoods after serving terms in Congress. They did not envision a near permanent political class of privileged elitists who take advantage of insider information to enrich themselves. And now our congressman, Seth Magaziner, in the U.S. House of Representatives, is looking to do something about that. Hey, folks, welcome to In the Dugout. Your host, Mike Stenhouse here. As I mentioned, the founding fathers envisioned Congress, and especially the House of Representatives with its 2-year terms, as a body that would reflect the will and the interests of common citizens, all the people. First, they wanted representation to come from the people, common, back at the day, farmers, blacksmiths, whatever their work was, common people, lawyers, representing, because they were close to the people, because they came of the people, that they would understand the needs and the will of the people. And then they would return before they got corrupted, before they got too enmeshed into the swamp in the political process. So we held direct elections to ensure that the representatives were representative democracy. Don't forget, we're a constitutional republic. We are not a pure democracy. So they wanted those representatives to be of the people and understand the needs of the people. And they wanted, like I said, they envisioned, that's why they only gave 2-year terms. It was kind of meant to be a term limit kind of thing. I don't think they envisioned that the same people would get elected year after year after year after year. And we all know, whether it's here in Rhode Island or in Washington, D.C., that the longer people remain in office, the more the corrupting influences of lobbyists and advocates can get hold of them, the more they can become compromised or start figure out how to use the grift of the office to enrich themselves. So they wanted the House to be kind of this rotating body of representatives, while the Senate, with their 6-year terms, would have kind of a more moderating, longer term influence in Congress. And they also want fresh ideas, fresh approaches that, again, reflect the will of the people. If we're electing common people like us with other careers, they did not intend in the House for certain that to become your career. They intended it to be lawyers, blacksmiths, everything else they said, farmers, teachers, whoever else. So, and the fear of corruption was evident not just now as we see it happening, but the founders were acutely aware of the dangers that could be inflicted or imposed upon entrenched political elites. Well, long-term incumbency, no question, leads to corruption, certainly influence. The longer you're there, the more influence you're going to get, and the more you're not doing the will of the people, and the more you're doing the will of special interest groups. So that's why we sought this, and in no way did they envision that Congress people would take advantage of government, take advantage of insider information to enrich themselves. Now, this is an issue. We've seen it with Nancy Pelosi. We've seen Republicans and Democrats alike accused in Congress of illicit trading. How could you possibly have known to trade that stock the day before it plummeted or the day before it rose or whatever the case may be? There is insider information that constantly floats around Congress. There's no question about that. Which regulations are going to be included or not included in the bill, and which industries or companies that might help or hurt, right? Or which kinds of companies or industries are going to be getting big subsidies, in a bill. They know that before the public knows that, and the temptation is there. And the longer you're there, again, the longer that corruption has a chance to take hold. So. Eh, Again, we are an organization, our Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity. You can call us conservative, you can call us free market, but what we really are at the end is we are constitutionalists. We believe in the four corners, the actual written words, their original intent, not some new modern theory of what that intent is. We believe in the written four-corner words of the Constitution, that they still are relevant today. And the founding fathers clearly had this view of Congress that it was not forever, near permanent political supremacists who would become corrupt, who would become subject to the, temptations offered by lobbyists and other special interest groups, and who certainly would not use insider information to enrich themselves. So it's with that as a backdrop. It's with the idea that we want to return to common people representing other common people in Congress that I look forward to having our discussion with our Rhode Island U.S. Congressman Seth Magaziner, who's in his first term in office, but who is co-sponsor of a bill, a bipartisan bill, that will hopefully put an end to insider stock trading. Let's meet the congressman here on In the Dugout. So joining me now is the aforementioned congressman from our state, and I think it's the first time we've had a U.S. congressman or woman playing ball with us here in the dugout, but Representative Seth Magaziner from Rhode Island, welcome to In the Dugout.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike, and I'm glad to be here. I know that there are some issues where we will have some fierce disagreements, but I think in our democracy, we always have to look for opportunities for common ground, and I think we found a good opportunity for common ground on this issue. So looking forward to diving in.
Well, clearly with trust in government and wasteful spending, what's going on, all that stuff going on, and Congress people, stock trading, we need faith in our government, and then the legislation you have co-sponsored, I think, takes us a long way there. So if you would, tell us about your Trust in Congress Act, which and tell us where that stands right now in the House.
Absolutely. So plain and simple, members of Congress should not be allowed to trade stocks, and our bill would ban it. So basically, members of Congress, when we're elected, we should be making decisions based on what is best for the people, what's best for our constituents, not what is best for our own personal finances. And the opportunity for conflicts of interest is just too great. We will know before the public what might be going in a bill or not going in a bill that could impact an industry, what new regulation could be added or taken away, things that would have a material impact on the stock market. And members of Congress should not be able to trade off of that inside information. So this is an issue that I actually ran an ad on this when I first ran for Congress in 2022. This is an issue that I feel passionately about. And when I went to Congress, it was the first bill that I co-sponsored. At the time, it was being led by a member named Abigail Spanberger from Virginia. Yep. She, along with Chip Roy from Texas, were the original two who introduced this and raised this issue. Spanberger has since retired from the House. She's running for governor of Virginia.
Right.
And so I've stepped in as the lead on the bill, the Democratic lead on the bill, Chip Roy's still the Republican lead. And we're working together on it, and we're hoping to get it done this Congress.
So I don't know how things exactly work in the House. The bill has been formally submitted, and you're just waiting for leadership. Will it have a committee hearing?
I hope so. So, it's a little different than at the Rhode Island General Assembly where every bill gets a hearing.
Right, right.
In Congress, there's no guarantee that your bill will get a hearing, but they do have things called member days sometimes where a member of Congress can go to a committee and sort of talk about anything for 5 minutes. And so I know that's
Okay.
something that Abigail and Chip did in the past, is they would go to the member day for the committee of jurisdiction and make their case that way. But there are also procedural ways that we might be able to circumvent the committee process if we're not given a committee vote. And so I think at this point, all options are on the table. Chip and I have been meeting, we've been strategizing, and the bill's been introduced. So I'm the lead sponsor. He's the first co-sponsor. We've got 60 co-sponsors already, and it was only introduced a couple weeks ago. So we've got some good early momentum, but we're going to keep working it.
Now, you've got all those co-sponsors, and I think it's important to note that it's a bipartisan group of co-sponsors. Yes. This is not a Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal thing. This is a good government, trust in government thing, right?
Very much so. Very much so. I would say this is a bill that has bipartisan support and also bipartisan opposition. And so, we've got an interesting coalition that's come together around this. And I think it's a coalition of people who are courageous, who aren't afraid to speak truth to power. And again, in the case of Chip Roy, who, is a leading member of the Freedom Caucus, he and I may disagree on 9 issues out of 10, but we're aligned on this because we think that we need to change the way that Washington operates.
Now, before I get into some more questions on the bill, I would like to note that we're taping this on a Wednesday morning, February 19th. We were due to have a press conference in Rhode Island to showcase some of the bipartisan support you had here in this state. I was invited, thankful. I was looking forward to attending. You had Ross Cheat from the former, chair of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission, John Marion from Common Cause. You had League of Women Voters. So really good bipartisan support, and I hope we can redo that in the future. But I wanted to ask, this is not the first bite at the apple for this kind of thing. There have been bills and laws and guidelines and ethics passed on this. How is your bill different? How does it advance? Because there's been bills before, but yet the insider trading seems to continue to go on. So why is this bill different?
So there was a law that was passed a few years ago to mandate transparency. And so anytime any member buys or sells a stock now, we do have to report it. There's a monthly reporting schedule. And so that passed a few years ago. Transparency is a good start, but it's not enough. Okay, now we have transparency, and so we know that it's happening and that there are some members of Congress who are trading a lot. And so our bill takes the next step and says, okay, we're done with just being transparent. We just want to ban it now and say that if you own stocks and you're elected to Congress, you either have to divest, you either have to sell, or you have to move those investments to a blind trust where someone else manages them without your knowledge. So
we're going from transparency to outright banning is what you're saying.
That's right. Exactly.
All right. And the opposition you mentioned, I'm curious to know what the opposition is. I mean, I've done a little research on this. I looked it up. I mean, it seems to be kind of trivial arguments like these onerous rules could prohibit wealthy people or successful people who really have a lot of stock investments from running for Congress because of disclosure and banning rules would just impact their lives too much. How do you respond to that? And what else are you hearing in opposition to this?
Yeah, well, you'll notice that the opposition is not very vocal publicly because I think they know that this is something that the people want, right? And so they know that their position is not the popular one. What I would say is this. As I've talked to members to try to get them to sign on to the bill, they tend to have just a lot of logistical questions about how would it work. So they'll have questions like, well, my spouse works for a company and gets stock options as compensation. Would she or he have to quit their job? And the answer is no. Like, we make an exception for, stock-based compensation for your spouse's job. Or they'll have questions like, if I have to sell, will I get a big tax bill if I have to sell everything? And so the answer is, well, you have the option of doing a blind trust instead, so you don't have a big tax bill. It's like, I think like a lot of it is like not necessarily that a lot of members are dug in their opposition. It's just that they kind of have questions about like how would it work at a very granular level. And so we who are advocating for the bill, we just have to educate people, like sometimes on a one-on-one basis, to explain to them how they would comply and how the rules would work.
Yeah. And of course, there are always extraordinary circumstances where, big bill might not cover every contingency. And that's why you have an amendment process, right? Or, you can adjust the bill if there are certain circumstances. Now, I guess the case of Nancy Pelosi would be the most well-known, her husband and the alleged trading there, whether that was inside knowledge or not, that's not for me to judge or anyone's. But a lot of Republicans and Democrats, prominent names like Dianne Feinstein, Tommy Tuberville from the senator from Alabama, John Hickenlooper, Democrat from a lot of people have been accused of making illicit trades. So again, this is not going to benefit one side of the aisle or the other.
Yeah, no, I mean, certainly all the examples you named are well known. Just this past week, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's chairing the committee overseeing Doge and Elon Musk's efforts with Doge, just bought a bunch of Tesla stock, which, again, like raises questions. And so you're right. I mean, there's bipartisan support for this bill. There's also bipartisan trading that's happening. And so, my thing is like, I don't care. And by the way, I'm not suggesting necessarily that every single one of these trades is corrupt,
right?
But it certainly, at the very least, gives the impression that it might be, and that impression is not good for anyone.
Yeah, and it's the image that's important here. So I want to ask you kind of a two-part question here. You kind of hinted at it earlier. Do Congress people, House or Senate, really have access to insider knowledge that could impact, foretell which way a stock might be to go? And it is all about image because, people should not be going to Congress to enrich themselves, as you say in your media release. But on the other hand, so that's image. On the other hand, does this actually improve governance? So do they really have insider knowledge? But so the image might look bad, but does it actually improve governance?
Yeah. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say that every single time a member of Congress trades stock, it's because they have inside information. But that doesn't mean it doesn't happen sometimes, right? And so it's certainly possible. A good example would be knowing whether a new regulation is going to be included in a bill or not. If there's a new regulation that impacts, the pharma industry or the, take your pick, right? Some other industry, knowing whether something is going to make it into a bill or not would be inside information. Now, it's already illegal to insider trade. So if a member of Congress trades off that information, they're already committing a crime. But it's not enough to say, well, it's already a crime, so no need to do anything. You also, our bill would eliminate the opportunity to commit the crime to begin with, right? And so there's a prevention aspect to this. So again,
but when I say how would it improve governments, I mean, how does this help the average person in America?
By making it clear that when members of Congress decide how to vote or what actions to take in their official capacity, they are doing it because they feel it's right for the people, not because it's right for their own bank accounts, right? I mean, that's at its purest form. We as elected officials should be doing what we think is right for America and for our constituents. And that should be the only set of factors that we consider, not what it'll mean for our brokerage account.
Right, because sometimes helping your brokerage account might actually hurt the family budgets and business budgets of the everyday American. Yeah. If you have just a couple more minutes, I just want to cover one more area. If there's kind of a related area, it might even be one of those areas you talked about where we don't totally agree. But it is about image, right? I think a lot of this is about trust in government. What's been on the front page and the headline of every newspaper and cable news for the last few weeks is this. What I think is a bad look for Congress is just this unwanted spending that's been approved. Now, Donald Trump is going after that with his Doge team and Elon Musk and all that. Here's what your fellow House of uh, Representative said, Tim Burchett, that a lot of this look is actually going to maybe come back, Republicans and Democrats alike, and it's going to come back to haunt them when they see how some of this money spent, maybe in the way you were just talking about, right? It might benefit them rather than the common American. Um, that kind of wanton, wasteful spending is also a bad look for Congress and deflates our trust in government. Just your thoughts on this whole effort
Yeah.
to reduce wasteful government spending.
So I'd say a couple things. First of all, if there are ideas for how to reduce wasteful spending or make government more efficient, I'm all for that. I'm a former state treasurer, and I understand that in any large organization, including a government, you always have to be vigilant and try to find ways to do things in a more cost-effective way. And so if all this was President Trump bringing in Elon Musk to go through the federal budget, go through the grants, and flag ones that he thought were wasteful or problematic, I think that would be great. Where I think it gets problematic is twofold. Number one, process matters. And so I think if you're someone who believes in the Constitution and the rule of law, to have a president and his staff just go through and start canceling whole programs that Congress appropriated money for is a clear violation of separation of powers, in my view. Now, the courts are going to weigh in on this. They have weighed in on it in the past during the Watergate era over what's called impoundment, which is this practice of holding back money that Congress has appropriated. And so, by all means, go through the federal budget, with a fine-tooth comb and look for things that you think are wasteful and or fraud or whatever, and bring those to light so that we can look at them and debate them. But I think, again, we swear an oath to the Constitution. Under the Constitution, it's Congress that has the power of the purse. And I would imagine that with a Republican majority, if Doge does find things that are wasteful or fraudful, that my colleagues on both sides would be interested in knowing that and would take that into account when we make a budget. And then
I think what you're saying, it's clear that certain expenses, the executive branch does have certain authority over certain other expenses, like those ones specifically appropriated by Congress. Your view is that would need congressional approval before they could be cut, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Constitution is a pesky thing, but we sign and we all swear an oath to it. I'd say, on just to take that a step further, understand when Congress passes an appropriations bill, that's a law, right? It's not a set of suggestions. It's not, just a blueprint. It's an appropriations law. And actually, in the appropriations laws, if you read them, there are certain line items where Congress says the executive can spend up to X amount, and the executive has discretion on how much to spend. There are other times when Congress says, spend this amount, and very clearly does not give the executive that discretion. And so, again, the Supreme Court has ruled on this in the past. I think process matters. And then I think also, of course, there are legitimate policy debates around what is appropriate spending and what's not. I think it's actually very much in our national security interest, for example, for us to be spending some money on humanitarian aid to build goodwill in the developing world. Other people may have policy disagreements about that, and that's a legitimate debate to have, but we should have the debate and not have,
and you use the key word, legitimate, public welfare uses, to help the poor or disadvantaged in other countries. And there's illegitimate, spending, as a lot of that money ends up. So I think we largely agree with you. We are all about being pro-constitutional at our center. That's what we believe. How to interpret the Constitution, that's a whole nother issue. And the courts will decide that. The only thing, and I'm not saying this about you, but certain people I've seen, they want the money spigot to keep open, so they're hiding behind, this constitutional law. I just let the courts decide. I think it's a very interesting legal question. But back to your bill, certainly it's a bad look for congressmen and women to be trading stocks and enriching themselves while they're in office. I want to give you the final word. I want to applaud you for co-sponsoring this bill. You, along with your co-sponsor, Chip Roy, I hope we do have that press conference back in Rhode Island in the coming weeks or months. But final word to you, Congressman Magaziner, on your bill. I did notice, did your fellow congressman from Rhode Island, Gabe Amo, co-sponsor this? Just out of curiosity?
I think I know he co-sponsored it in the last Congress. I'll have to see if
Okay.
he's not on this Congress yet or not. If not, I'll chase him down.
All right,
But-
final word to you.
Yeah, listen, I just say this. Ethics should be a bipartisan issue. And, we should have high standards for our elected officials when it comes to ethics. We should not allow conflicts of interest to occur, whether it's in the executive, judicial, or legislative branch. So I'm trying to do my part with this bill to ban members of Congress from trading stocks, a bipartisan bill, a bipartisan issue. I thank you for helping us to promote the issue, and I'm hopeful that this will be the Congress when we finally get it done.
The transparency you've shown by coming on this show, again, also is commendable. And while we do agree on this one, maybe some other time you come on an issue maybe we don't agree with, and we could have a little back and forth. I think a good debate is healthy for the public, so they can hear all sides of an issue. But anyway, regardless of that, thank you for your time today. Good luck with this legislation, and I know your great staff will keep us apprised of its progress through Congress.
Thank you, Mike.
Congressman Seth Magaziner, thank you very much. And again, we thank you, our audience, for viewing in today. So until next game, Mike Stenhouse out.